This is the GamesIndustry.biz Microcast, recorded on Tuesday the 28th of May 2024 for whichever day the video editing team are able to get this to us. I'm James Batchelor, I'm Editor-in-Chief of GamesIndustry.biz. I'm joined as always by Chris Dring, Editor-in-Chief of Games... No, I'm Editor-in-Chief, I'm giving you my job there. Head of GamesIndustry.biz, Chris Dring. As you can see, we're a little bit rattled this week. I'm just going to dive straight into it. We use this to talk about the biggest news of the past week from the games industry. We are the news. We are still a little bit rattled by the news. Exactly 1 week ago, Gamer Network Ltd, which is the parent company of GamesIndustry.biz, Eurogamer, VG247, Rock Paper Shotgun, various kind of brands, was acquired by Ziff Davis, which owns IGN. We've been bundled into their We've been acquired and brought into their gaming and entertainment division, which includes IGN, Humble Bundle, Map Genie, How Long to Beat, various kind of recognisable brands. We're in a bit of a transition period at this point. We knew and didn't know that this was coming. We knew that Gamer Network has been publicly up for sale since December. ReedPop, our previous parent, wanted to sell its digital brands in order to focus on its events business. So the sale has been kind of a long time coming. Behind the scenes, some of us knew that it was going to be Ziff Davis, or at least Ziff Davis was a likely buyer, like an interested party. It was officially announced last Tuesday. Along with that, was announced some redundancies. Perhaps I should have seen this coming, given how many acquisitions we've covered that get followed by redundancies. This is where we kind of limit what we can talk about, because so much of it is still kind of in transition period. In terms of how GI is affected, I can say that, as has been made public, Brendan Sinclair, our managing editor, and Jeffrey Rousseau, our staff writer, they have been laid off. So we have lost them. There are other members of the company that were related to or working with GI that are in consultancy period. These have affected various teams across Gamer Network. So I know that people from Rock Paper Shotgun and Dicebreaker and other, and even kind of behind the scenes team, people have been affected. There's limits to what we can say purely because we just don't have all the answers yet. We're in a very kind of interesting transition period at the moment. There's a lot to kind of work out as to how we go forward. Chris, I'm going to turn to you. You've got a busy week ahead of you in terms of meetings with the new overlords, etc. What was your take on? What's your take on this in terms of what this means for the future of GI in general?
Pass. Obviously, there are two elements to this, right? First, there are the layoffs, and it's hard to sort of talk about them with any level of impartiality and distance that I think we're supposed to have. Which obviously, to be clear, GI is still doing everything it's doing. There's nobody who's come around and said you've got to stop. You can't do your HR summit, your best place to work awards, all that stuff. We're still doing all of that. We're still operating on US hours and UK hours. We're still we've still got some amazing features lined up and stuff like that. But we have lost some of our top talent, and it is a blow, and it hurts us. But there might be. Can't really talk about it anymore because I don't know anymore. And as I say, I can't really talk about it without emotionally reacting to it in some way. There's the other element to the story, which is the consolidation in the media space, which this sort of represents. What is the future for Gamer Network's brands, including the one you're listening to? I sort of don't want to speculate. I say, James mentioned we're sitting down with our new owners this week. We're going to be talking through lots of stuff, and I think I'm optimistic, but yeah, I'll leave that there. I think it's worth noting that whereas other games media groups grew exponentially during the pandemic, Gamer Network didn't. It was part of an events business, ReedPop, that had a horrible time during COVID-19, and as a result, this media business had fallen behind the others. The hope was to find a buyer that could provide Gamer Network with the support structure and accelerant that it needed to grow. And I guess we're going to find out, well, time will tell if IGN is that right home or not. I hope it is. What I will say actually from a GI point of view, and I'm not sure this is a view shared by everybody in Gamer Network, but certainly shared by myself and James and the GI team, is that we really had a great relationship with ReedPop. That organisation helped us launch shows in Seattle and Boston, which was exciting. We had a lot of fun doing those. I'm hoping maybe we still can. I don't know. I'm going to miss my colleagues over there. They were wonderful and great, and even though they had a hard time during the pandemic, working with them to do some of the things that we achieved over the last 6 years or so was just it's just been a joy, and so I hope that we can have as good a relationship with IGN and the folks there. But I don't know right now. Maybe I can say more in the future. It feels weird. Like we shouldn't really be the news.
No,
it's like it's. I remember many years ago we did a cover about Game going into administration that became the headline, and I was really uncomfortable back then because we'd said that Game were gone, and it caused a big series of news stories, and I didn't like being the headline then, and I don't like being the headline now. But we'll find out. Like I say, not too much we can say. It's you know.
There's limit. I mean, all I can say is kind of echoing Chris. Like, GI is working as the editorial team is working as best we can, given our resources are currently limited. We're working as best we can to continue delivering the kind of the quality of coverage you expect. Is to continue delivering everything the industry needs to know. We may have discussions as to we may change the way we do some things. We may kind of hone in on certain things. These are all conversations we're going to be having as a team going forward. But all I can just say,
we can't really talk about, because who knows, we might end up, part of the reason, IGN's got a lot of staff and they've got a lot of people. We might end up being backed by different resource. We don't know. So it's all I do know is what we've got coming up. I know that we're going to Summer Games Fest. I know we're going to Gamescom Latam, and we've got some really big, cool things going on in the next month, including GI Sprint. So, and that all stuff is well in development and well in the works. So, but yeah, you'll hear about it when we know about it.
There really isn't much else to say. So let's dive into news that isn't us. Big one from last week, and this kind of shows that GI is still going to be delivering kind of the quality of coverage you expect. Like literally the day after the announcement of this acquisition, Chris, you had a little exclusive for us in that Arrowhead is getting new leadership. Do you want to talk us through who's in charge now?
I should definitely have had this story up in front of me so that I could deliver the James Batchelor style what's it called, a news bulletin that you do. It's anyway. I do have it in front of me. So seamlessly done. So Arrowhead Games Studio, famous for Helldivers 2, which came out earlier this year. Not forget, it's become an absolute bonkers hit, and it's remarkably the fastest selling PlayStation game in history. Who would have thought that? If you told me it was Spider-Man 2, yeah, of course. If you told me it would be God of War, absolutely. Helldivers 2, a game I hadn't even heard of 6 months ago, is the fastest selling PlayStation game in history. It's led by a Johan, who is the CEO, very well liked, very vocal, very entertaining CEO on social media. He's also the game director. He's been doing a lot of the work. He has hired his own boss. He's hired Shams Jorjani, I think it's how you pronounce his name. He's the new CEO. He's worked with Johan and the Helldivers team for a long time. In fact, he was right there at the start. If you read the interview, he was there when they were but a student team entering a competition, sort of as a support person, somebody who ran the competition. It makes absolute sense. You've had a monster hit. They're trying at the moment to spin lots of plates. There's a lot of demands on their time to put out new weapons, new characters, new monsters, new villains, and that kind of stuff to keep Helldivers 2 going. The person responsible for that is also, I think, to quote Peter Molyneux, I'm ruining your bit, James. Quote Peter Molyneux, ordering the bog roll, right? He's hired his own CEO. It's not unusual. Lots of companies do it. A lot of people online, a lot of gamers online, going, "This is unheard of." It absolutely is not unheard of. It makes perfect sense. And in fact, you could argue that creative people, in my experience, perhaps shouldn't be leading businesses and handling HR processes and stuff like that. So it's quite cool. It's quite exciting for the team at Arrowhead. It's really brilliant to see that team grow. They've got ambitions. They've just made a load of money. They want to stay independent. I had a big old interview with them, big long chat. It was one of those chats as well where I think I got 2 questions in, and about 30 minutes of the interview had gone because they love to talk, and it was really great, and it was really candid, and they're really interesting. And I hope Helldivers 2 does well. There's a lot of talk at the moment about Helldivers 2's numbers going down. I'm not surprised their numbers have gone down because it's just that it's 3 months in. They seem to be quite healthy still. I just think people like to tell stories about things collapsing. But Helldivers 2 isn't a game that's built like other live service titles. It's not a free-to-play game. You buy it premium. So they've made their money, and now they're hoping to maintain it, and they've still got a sizable audience in which to support and learn from and develop from. So yeah, they've got a new CEO. It's to help run the business better as they look to grow and build upon the success of Helldivers 2. Makes a lot of sense.
It absolutely does. Like, I kind of echoing you, largely because you stole my bits that I was going to say. Like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Like, because we've seen this both throughout our careers. You do see studios who hire like a business-minded person, and even like and it happens at all scales. Like, you see, Arrowhead is not a small studio. And it's working on AA if not AAA games. Like, it makes sense that you have a business person that can handle that scale of business rather than distracting the creative leader from from focusing on the task and delivering what it is that made the studio a success in the first place. Like, Helldivers 2 is by far Arrowhead's biggest success, but they've had other successes before. The original Helldivers, I believe, sold 4 million, which is not not too shabby a number.
Certainly not for the genre. It's
Absolutely
a
no.
top-down view genre that the first Helldivers 2 isn't that, but the first Helldivers was. It was a real hit, yeah.
So it makes sense. Like, I hear this at like conferences. I can't think of specific examples, but I do hear this at conferences or when I'm talking to indies, like even indies, saying like, right, you need someone who understands business, because video games are a very creative industry. I think if the majority of people in the industry had their way, they would just sit and focus on making games, because that's what they want to do. That's why they got into this business in the first place. And ultimately, that is perhaps the best part of being part of the games. And certainly on the development side, is the best part of being in the game industry is making these games and making these things that people really enjoy. But the scale of the industry now, even if you're an indie, like this, like the way that business works, you need to understand how to run a company. You need to understand how to support a team and look after your team. You need to understand HR. You need to order the bog roll.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, Chris references. Like, I remember talking to 22 Cans when Peter Molyneux, Peter Molyneux's new studio, and they hired someone to be a CEO. And I apologise, Simon something, I can't remember his surname, but I remember talking to Simon quite often. And the interview about him joining is like, ultimately, do you really want the person who made Fable and Populous and all the others ordering the bog roll? No, you want them doing what they do best and what delivers success.
Yeah, to be clear, Johann's been running the studio for a while. He knows.
Yes, of course.
It's not a case of lack of expertise. It's actually a bit of a personal thing. Does he want to be the CEO, bring in a new creative director and become the boss, or does he want to bring in his own boss and carry on doing the thing he loves? And he chose the latter. And I completely empathise. When I was offered the job I do now on GI, I kind of pushed against it because I didn't want to be the person just having to sit in the HR meetings, all that kind of stuff. And we negotiated a thing for me personally where I get to continue being the journalist as well as having a sort of leadership role. So I completely empathise, I understand it, and I think loads of companies do it. Hideo Kojima doesn't run his own studio.
No. Yeah.
So no. It's not. Sam Lake is not the boss of Remedy. It's they are the people the people you recognise, and the people who are behind those hit products. But they're not the names that are certainly above the door behind those hit products. They're not the people making sure everything ticks over and runs okay. And not unusual. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners know that.
I'm really looking forward to see what happens with Arrowhead next. I haven't tried Helldivers 2 myself yet, but I'm really I would be interested in trying it, because I love the idea of this kind of ongoing storyline through the multiplayer. Like that just fascinates me. But it was the ambition that comes across from your interview. I mean, like the headline, we want to be the next Blizzard or From Software. Like, this game and the success of this game has really put Arrowhead on the map, more so than it ever was before. It wasn't an unknown studio before, but it's really kind of put it in the spotlight. And I'm intrigued to see where they go from here.
Yeah, that bit I like, because it wasn't about we want to be the next Blizzard because we want to make billions of dollars, we want to make From Software because we want to sell whatever. They've already hit that number in many ways. What they were talking about is they want to have a legacy. They want to be a place that kids growing up going, I'd love to work for Arrowhead. Yeah. It's like when kids growing up, you say, I want to work for Valve or whatever. Right? They want to have that kind of legacy, and to do that, they need to keep making good things. And it was really reassuring. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about. They'd like to stay independent because they're less dependent on needing to grow and hit those sales markers, and they can just do what they want. They want to keep making co-op games. I'm excited by them. I'm excited for them. Well done to them for that hit, and I hope that it continues to be successful for them. And and good luck to whatever comes next. We'll be following it, of course,
Absolutely.
and reporting on it, and hopefully celebrating with them as they go on.
We're already running low-ish on time, so there's two more stories I want to talk about. There was a couple of acquisitions announced last week that I think were worth talking about. Other acquisitions, yes. Ones that don't involve us. There's two that kind of I wanted to talk about. Like, so one is Nintendo acquired Shiver Entertainment, which is a studio that specialises in Switch ports. They made Hogwarts Legacy and Mortal Kombat 1, the Switch versions of those. They were owned by Embracer Group, and they've now been acquired for an undisclosed sum. Nintendo historically doesn't make a great deal of acquisitions. It acquired a couple in 2022, I believe. One of which was, but this is kind of case in point. One of which was it was like a studio in Tokyo that's been a long-running partner, so long-running. I think it's almost exclusively made games for Nintendo. That I remember writing that story. It's like I didn't realise they weren't owned by Nintendo already. This is for me. This is a prime example of one of those acquisitions where
a lot of Nintendo companies are like that, by the way. You'll be surprised at how many Nintendo companies that make like Paper Mario and stuff like that aren't already aren't owned by Nintendo.
No,
Pokemon, another one.
Yeah, Pokemon.
Anyway.
But no, this for me is a prime example of one of those acquisitions where it is to secure a partner before someone else takes it, and we've seen this so much over the years. Nintendo alone did this 2019 with. Buying Next Level Games, the studio that made Luigi's Mansion 3.
I think it's 2021, wasn't it?
2021? I thought it was earlier than that. I could be wrong. Okay, regardless, they bought Next Level Games. Who cares about facts on this show?
I'm pretty sure it was post-pandemic.
Okay. But Nintendo bought Next Level Games, and that was primarily, I believe you said, Chris, that the Next Level Games were investigating a sale. One of the last titles they'd made was Luigi's Mansion 3, which had sold 3-4 million copies, millions of copies.
It's only sold 15 million copies. As of the last week, it's on 14.2 or something like that. It's mad.
Which far more than any of the previous Luigi's Mansions have made. So you understand the need there. Similarly, we saw this with Sony buying Insomniac because Insomniac makes so many amazing PlayStation games. We saw this with Take-Two very recently buying Gearbox from the crumbling ship that was Embracer Group. Because it gives them full control of the Borderlands franchise, which again is a massive.
You never know where they might end up, right? This is the thing. You never know. You're right. Nintendo doesn't make lots of acquisitions. They've got this view, long-held view that stretches past CEOs, where the idea is you're buying talent, and talent can just leave, right? Nintendo own Luigi's Mansion 3. They don't need to own Next Level Games, but at the same time, Next Level Games they make Mario Strikers. A key Nintendo thing. If at the moment finding studios to work on these games is hard. So a studio that you trust and does a good job, you want to keep hold of, and so the Nintendo does pick up a lot of these acquisitions. This acquisition seems different because it's not a studio that makes Nintendo games; they make third-party games on Nintendo platforms. And by the sounds of it, that's what they're going to continue doing. So a bit of background. I do know a little bit about Nintendo's current strategy, which is they're desperately looking, and I say desperate, not like panicking, but they are really trying to ramp up their development partnerships, their development resources. They're trying to find new developers to work on some of their IP. They're speaking to a lot of developers that have never made their games before, looking to create new titles. It's not just signing indie games, it's getting independent developers to work on some of their franchises. The other thing is I've lost my train of thought there. But they're also, ramping up their own internal capacity. They're opening a whole new building in a couple of years' time, where they're going to be heavily investing in new talent, new studios to develop more games. Games are taking longer to make. All their financial calls lately have talked about the fact that video games are taking longer and longer to make. They're not smashing out a Mario game every 3 years anymore, or even as remember the time when Ocarina of Time's 3-year development cycle seemed mad. And then they took the best part of 6 years to do Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. So we're looking at, they know that they need more talent, they need more games. This studio, I guess, fits that brief a little bit, but they seem primarily focused on bringing games from other parties to Switch. And I guess with Switch 2 on the horizon, they might be looking at a bunch of those PS5 games, maybe an Elden Ring or those sort of big hit titles going, we would like to have these on our platform. And wouldn't it be good to have our own development resource dedicated to delivering that?
That's the thing. Like the success of the Switch, I think, has highlighted again. Nintendo's relationship with third parties, or rather, the relationship between third parties and Nintendo platforms, has kind of been up and down over the years. Like, funnily enough, I was covering this for This Day in Games, the section of our newsletter, where we just kind of report on, and we remind people of an old story that happened on the day that newsletter went out. There was one recently where EA dropped support for the Wii U. I think it was about 9 months after launch, and Wii U was another time when Nintendo was really emphasising, we're going to have a lot more third-party support, and then you lose one of the biggest AAA publishers within 9 months.
And that position meant that situation led into Switch. So when Nintendo had Switch, they barely had any third-party support, and that's. Which is mad when you think about it. Like a lot of games companies sort of went, a bit late now. It's taken them a long time. It still doesn't get anywhere near as much third party support. Nintendo doesn't need it. It's got its own games, and their own games is why people buy their platforms. But obviously, if their games are taking longer to make, they want to put a regular cadence of software. Their success of Switch has been driven by the fact they've had a game a month, every month basically since the machine had come out, and that's quite a hard cadence to keep up. And I think when they move into the next generation, they'll try and do that with their own games. But I think they're going to need a stronger third-party slate. I suspect after Switch, it's going to be a lot easier talking to third parties. And Microsoft's already committed a bunch of games, including Call of Duty, to the Switch platform, to whatever the next Switch is going to be. So that's all quite cool. And I think this just feeds into that. And Nintendo's drive for more talent and more developers.
And it's been really good to see over the course of the Switch, the third party support and the ports that we've seen, really kind of ramping up. The fact that Hogwarts Legacy was the biggest game of the year that it came out, so to have it on Switch as well, it's kind of Nintendo for generations has been kind of an outlier. It makes very different games. It has very different kind of hardware, different platforms. You can't just port something directly. Certainly, Switches are kind of not easier in terms of there's fewer kind of separating gimmicks in terms of motion controls and so forth.
It's not built on motion controls. I know what you mean.
No, you know what I mean. It's
and game companies are trying to find new audiences, and Nintendo actually hit a different audience to PlayStation, Xbox. We forget that because we live in gamer circles. We all think that everyone who plays Nintendo Switch are the same people who own Xbox and PlayStations. They're not. They're mums and dads and kids and all sorts of people. It's a different audience. It may not be quite as lucrative audience, but it's a different audience. And when you're sitting there trying to grow your games and your IP, Nintendo's platforms, just as Apple's platforms and Google's platforms, everything like that, offer an opportunity to do that. And you saw Square Enix talking about an increased multi-format strategy. I think every games company is adopting an increased multi-format strategy now. That's good for Switch. It's good for Nintendo. And this is, I guess, them leaning into that.
Last story I want to discuss this week is one more acquisition. Is Atari has acquired the Intellivision brand and over 200 games, which means
war is over.
War is over. The longest running console war is finished. That alone means I just find the story hilarious. Just if you could travel back in time to the 70s and tell Atari fans that no, you will own Intellivision one day. This is quite a big one. Not massive in terms of the retro scene is relatively niche-ish, but thanks to Atari, the efforts that Atari are making, it's growing bigger. We don't have full details on which 200 games from Intellivision are now owned by Atari, but we do know that the two brands, there's an understanding that Intellivision was working on the Amico console. Atari has not acquired that console. Amico will still be developed separately, and it's still due to be kind of released at some point, but it's all done through a licensing thing, so it's licensed to still use the Intellivision brand, etc. Chris,
games as well.
Intellivision games,
and the Amico console was supposed to come out in October 2020, I think, a long time ago. It hit the financial difficulties, manufacturing costs a lot of money, distribution, all that kind of thing, and it's basically meant that the console's been stuck in the state it's in, which is unreleased for a long time now, and they needed more money. I'm guessing, it's not explicitly said in any release, I'm guessing this is them getting that money. This is them going to Atari saying, look, you can have everything, but we just need the money to better release this device out there into the wild. It's pretty desperate, really, from that side of things. From Atari's perspective, they are the retro. They are positioning themselves as the main retro games brand. It actually feels very in key. It feels like a smart move, but we'll see. It's quite an ambitious move. Obviously, this is the latest in a long line of retro or themed acquisitions. It's not just IP they own. They own some really great game developers. Like, you know me, James, I'm a massive fan of Night Dive. I think they're one of the best game developers out there. They remaster and remake a lot of shooters from the boomer shooters from the 90s and early noughties. They've also got Digital Eclipse. Did I get that one right? I did say it.
Yeah, Digital Eclipse. Which I'm intrigued by those. Like I played the making of Karateka earlier this year, which was like Karateka itself is not my sort of game, but the making of Karateka, like this really interesting kind of digital museum where you've got like proper like full like you've got the letters between the developer and the publisher like from the 80s and like all the different prototypes are playable. Like I absolutely love this idea of kind of virtual museums for really kind of formative titles, like, and I'd love to see more of this.
Yeah, it's really interesting what they're doing at Atari, and it's quite exciting. And I hope that it's sustainable enough for them to keep doing things like that. And Night Dive don't just remaster Star Wars Dark Forces and Quake, which I'm sure does very well for them. They also their latest remaster is Pode, which I've never heard of, which is about you end up I think one of the it's like a pair of buttocks on legs you have to shoot and stuff. It's weird and probably problematic. I've not quite played it very much.
If it's buttocks, are you absolutely sure it's pronounced Pode?
Is P-O apostrophe D? I don't know. I don't know. It's about a chef who's been left alone on a spaceship. It's so weird. But it's they just clearly went, here's a weird shooter that no one played from 1995 or whatever. Let's redo it, because that's what the Stephen Kick, who runs that studio, he loves the weird stuff. He loves the stuff you haven't heard of. He loves spending loads of time remastering Shadow Man, which only I love. I remember, and I love that. I love that about them, and it's really interesting. And they're bringing games out to life that you may not have heard of. But the game I fell in love with from them was Power Slave Exhumed. It's a really sort of Metroidvania-y Doom Egyptian based game. I'm like, I've never heard of this game. It came out on the Saturn, the PlayStation 1, and then I got it, and it was honestly I loved it. I absolutely adored it, and I recommend anyone who's into those sort of old shooters to buy it. It's fantastic. But that was because I can guarantee you that was not a commercial decision. That was I love this stuff, and Atari seems to be doing backing a lot of that, which is wonderful, and I hope they keep doing it, and I hope it keeps going.
Right, before Chris gets too excited, I'm going to cut us off there. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We will going to be back next week with the usual Microcast. It could be probably quite a quiet week, I'm reckoning, because it's Summer Games Fest the week after. So this is kind of the calm before the storm.
But we have Summer Games Fest. This is the thing I don't like about Summer Games Fest. It's only small things. Everyone's gone, we'll just spread the announcements out a bit. No, the whole joy of E3 was the condensed 3 days of intense announcements that got the industry, everyone very excited. And now the industry could do with getting excited. But I think we might get some stuff this week. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a PlayStation thing or something in the next few days.
Okay.
And then some of it will come out afterwards. But yeah, so I don't know, James. I don't know if it will be quiet.
Well, you all need to keep your eyes on GamesIndustry.biz to find out. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. If you want to check out any previous episodes of the Microcast, you can find them all on YouTube or on the podcasting platform of your choice. Just search for the GamesIndustry.biz podcast and you get more news, insight and analysis into the world behind video games at GamesIndustry.biz. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week.